Hey everyone, welcome back to the Castaway Consultants, where we teach future Survivor players how to play the game by critiquing current players. I am one of your three co-hosts, Derek Kubicek, and today we are going to be talking about the finale of Season 48. Only one of yous can win.
Use guys.
I am joined today by my two fabulous co-hosts, Ryan Stacy and Josh Wessler, and I'm excited to talk about the finale with you guys tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I didn't watch, obviously, with you guys as we're recording this remotely, but I had a good time throughout the finale. No spoilers yet, but I was a little bit surprised with what our boot order here was, but I, enjoyed the result and I had a good time along the way. A couple of moments where I was either shouting or fist bumping or disappointed, had all the ups and downs for my viewing pleasure. So I enjoyed it.
It's kind of a roller coaster of emotions for me. Like, I was really enjoying it at first. The first immunity challenge was really fun. And then... but then it came back up at the end with a decent final tribal council. A little bit of a surprising one. And then a winner that I am fine with. That's what I'll say before we get into spoilers. But yeah, the final four round of play sucked. It's terrible. I know these two disagree with me, and I was looking on the Survivor Reddit thread out for the episode discussion times we're watching it. Gotta say, you two are definitely in the minority on this one, but that is okay.
Right. Before we get into the spoiler section, I'll just lead this off by saying I felt this finale, for the first time in a while, was not as self-referential onto the game of Survivor as we've seen in the past 15 to 20 seasons, where it turns into, this is what Survivor's all about. This is what Survivor's all about. This is what the game of Survivor is all about. And this one was 80%, this is what it's like to be alive. This is what it's like to be a person. Ultimately, the person who plays the game the most is victorious tonight, but it really was about the people first and foremost, and it was interesting and compelling for me, and I'm excited to talk about that with someone who agrees with me, because Ryan certainly did not, and he's allowed to have his opinion.
Correct-ass opinion,
even if it is a wrong opinion. So I wish I could have watched with Josh tonight, so that there would have been someone to enjoy this Final Four with me. But it's always nice to have a dissenting opinion on the other side as well. So that's all I'll say.
So should we just get into spoilers so we can talk about it?
Let's do it. Let's not beat around the bush any further. 3, 2, 1. What are you doing here if you haven't watched the episode? Spoiler alert, Kyle is our winner tonight, which is very exciting for me because we have a fantasy league for Survivor that we do with a bunch of college friends. I won. I had Kyle as my pick, and I'm a back-to-back champ because I had Rachel as my pick last season, so I am currently wearing my Survivor 48 buff in celebration for those who are listening and can't see me on the YouTube version of this.
The prize that you bought for whoever won,
yep. I get to keep.
And you just have happened to win the last two seasons, notably with the final pick in the draft this season, so congrats to you on that, Ryan.
Yeah,
it's an accomplishment.
It
not many people have done it.
We have had 4 people in the group do back-to-back seasons, which is about a third of the group now. But we've done it since San Juan del Sur.
I would say, including all 3 people on this podcast.
all 3 of us have done it, and then our friend Paige has done it as well. But it is pretty cool because I had an abysmal streak for a long time. My only win was frickin' Tommy on Island of the Idols, and he wants to win that season. So it's nice to have some vindication that I actually know what I'm talking about once in a while. Yeah, Survivor 48. It's done. It's in the books. How would you guys rank this? And we don't have to do like a full ranking, but like tier-wise, against like 41 and on with this modern era. How do you guys put this up against the others?
What I'll say, I think the edit was honest. I think in other seasons we've had an imbalance of edit on the winners. 41 and 43 immediately come to mind, where you don't really think the winner was necessarily deserving, or at least everyone didn't. Josh and I thought that Erica deserved it, but the wider community did not agree. Gabler, I don't think anybody saw coming.
Nope.
Jam Jam was pretty clear.
D was clear.
Rachel. Marianne was a fun winner.
Yep.
Not unexpected, but a little unexpected, like kind of a right mixture in there.
Yep.
Rachel was obvious.
Yep.
We appreciated that.
And then Kenzie.
And then Kenzie was not as obvious to some people.
Me.
Well, and not just you, but
mainly me.
On the podcast, you. So the editing consistency, I think, did enough justice to our final three and highlighted the parts of their game that was good and was bad. I put this somewhere in the middle in terms of overall entertainment as I watch it, but I would put it towards the top of the middle just because it is so different, and I liked the different. 47, I think, was still more compelling television, and I loved it, but this was a good to great season for me.
I think that this season, is the definition of just mid. Just because I think that it was in ways compelling when we were watching it, just because, like Derek said, it was very different than what we're used to, especially here in the new era. But I do not think this is going to be a good season on the rewatch. I think that is going to have very little rewatch value. And because of that, to me, that's going to be something that people are going to look at as being mid. So, and when you have most of the new era as above average Survivor entertainment wise, that means that it doesn't rank very well just against other seasons. So where Derek is putting it kind of on the upper middle ish, I'm going to put it at the lower middle. It's not bottom tier by any means, but I'm going to put it kind of in the realm of Survivor rankings, whatever that might look like someday, probably in a lower tier.
Yeah, I'm so of the 8 seasons of the new era, I think it's definitely bottom half, along with 41, 43, and 46. Those are my bottom 4. But it's a little different. 41 and 43, and then 46, all to me had unsatisfying winners. That was the big problem for me. 41 had some dumb gameplay mechanics, which hurts it. Gabler's such a weird winner. This one was different, though, because it had a satisfying winner. I thought Kyle deserved it. It's just there was such a slog in the middle there. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting to me. I would definitely put it in those 4, but I haven't quite figured out where yet. But certainly bottom half for me, just because those last couple episodes and part of this finale was a slog to get through for me. And I agree that this will be a tough one to rewatch. This will be painful to rewatch, especially because they tease you so many of these episodes, like, oh, are we going to make a big move tonight? And when it doesn't happen, and you know it going in, it's just like, it's kind of like rewatching One World.
Especially the post-merge. The pre-merge was fun. The pre-merge here had a lot of entertaining moments. We don't do this in our modern recaps, but in our Survivor Rewind series, we say, is this much-watched Survivor? You can make a case for that in the pre-merge, whereas in the post-merge, probably not.
Probably not.
You can definitely learn these lessons better in other seasons, I think. Context matters with this season. And I'll just go back to my original point that because Survivor has become so self-referential, this one going back to it's about the people and the way they feel, and then playing from a strong alliance from the top, one built on not just convenience or starting tribe, but a group of people that decide they're just going to ride it out until the end and then duke it out. I mean, we got to see it to its obvious conclusion. I mean, we didn't know which 3, but we got down to a 3. There were no surprises.
That's right. There were none.
That might not be must-watch Survivor because we've seen it before, but we have not seen it in a long time. It's kind of like a water well in the middle of the desert. I didn't exactly expect to find this here, but you can make that analogy any which way you want. So I can see where some people would have this on lower mid-tier. It does not belong in the bottom, though.
Like of all Survivor?
Of all Survivor.
Oh, yeah. Well, because Island of the Idols is there by itself.
Well, I'm saying it doesn't belong in the bottom tier even.
Yeah, the only one that belongs in the bottom tier is Island of the Idols.
Okay, bottom 2 tiers then, because you have the basement bottom tier, but then there's that second from the bottom tier where it's like, yeah, this still isn't very good.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it down with Edge of Extinction, Redemption Island, and One World, but that might be in the third from the bottom tier. But that's a big tier for me. It's that third from the bottom tier. There's a lot of seasons there. It's not like miserable. Makes you sad to watch. I was just bored for a lot of it. But should we jump into the episode proper?
Yes.
All right, let's do this. Final 5, baby. Camilla gives us a confessional early on that I really like, and kind of ends up coming into play, not with her but with Kyle. Is part of her game is she wants to own her lies, not until not beforehand, but at Trouble Council, Final Trouble Council, she wants to own her lies, and I think that's the best way you can play this game. So I just want to throw it out there as like, big consultant moment. This is the right way to play. If you are going to tell lies, which you should own them at the end. I just want to make that clear.
You should own whatever your game looks like.
True. Yes. Own your game, but yeah, owning your lies is, I think, the most effective way to play overall. But we're going to get a puzzle kind of challenge, run around and solve this puzzle at camp, or an advantage in the immunity challenge, which Eva is going to win. It's not going to help her much, though, because at the immunity challenge proper, Camilla has this epic comeback. She gets stuck in a muddy net early on and then still manages to come all the way back and win the puzzle. It was pretty epic.
Yeah, and you know, she's not close, like way behind. And Jeff, you know, maybe a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm like, I wonder if Camilla's gonna win this thing, just because Jeff kept saying, just you're still in this, Camilla, like never give up, blah 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 blah.
Derek said the exact same thing.
Yeah,
well, yeah, and
so I kind of like that caught my attention. I'm like, I wonder if she's coming back.
Well, and as soon as they start busting out the piccolo to taunt how far back you are in the challenge, I'm always wondering, like, oh, we're setting up for an amazing comeback. The only other comment I had on this challenge was, with all the running around that they had to do for this advantage, I would have rather just shot the ball. Are you kidding me? All that running around, wasting your energy, solving another puzzle lock in order to dunk the stupid ball. Like, I understand we don't want these to be overpowered, but this felt closer to the beer as a reward than it did to, like, skipping a whole phase of an immunity challenge.
Yeah, possibly a little underpowered.
Now, you know what, production? If you're going to lean a direction, lean in this direction. I don't want you to learn the wrong lessons.
Yeah, it's fine.
But I'm going to comment on it anyway.
So Camilla wins immunity, gets to go on reward for some pasta, and brings Eva with her. Eva's gotten so much food this season.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure why people are bringing her on so many rewards, but I think that she has probably had the easiest game of anyone in the new era, just with how much food that she has eaten and how many advantages she's gotten, and just like the type of alliance that she's in, where she's just kind of riding it to the end. It just stood out to me where I'm like, yeah, Eva's playing the game of Survivor, but it just seems like one of the easiest new era games.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'd have to really go back and look at all of it for someone else. But yeah, I agree. She's certainly in the conversation for just like easiest ride to do the finals. Mitch is gonna pitch voting out Joe. We have the opportunity, you know, neither Joe or Eva won immunity, so that means we can get rid of Joe. Eva's gonna play the idol on herself. We can do this. But then Kyle and Joe are gonna talk about, let's take out Mitch. And this whole time I'm like, yeah, this is a great opportunity. Maybe we could take out Joe. Maybe we could take out Kyle. Oh no, are they gonna do the thing where we tease a bunch of stuff and then just take out Mitch? Yep, that's what we're doing. Everyone wants Mitch to go because everyone likes him. And Kyle and Camilla are not scared of facing Joe and Eve in the finals, which is vindicated in hindsight. Kyle wins fairly easily, and the poll after the votes is that Camilla would have beaten both Joe and Eva. So, okay, like, that I'm fine with. But taking out Mitch? How about you guys take out Kyle? This is a great time to take out Kyle. You know, it should have been Joe and Eva grabbing Mitch and taking out Kyle. Even Camilla should want to take out Kyle.
To me, this is that hubris I talked about a couple episodes back. When Shaheen was voted out, I suppose. Someone is going to the end who thinks too highly of their game. They thought they could win, and they couldn't. And it turns out that it was Joe and Eva. And if you take that lens and retrospectively apply it through this entire post-merge, it starts to make some sense. It even vindicates Shaheen a little bit. Maybe his game would have been more favorably looked upon than Joe and Eva's, but ultimately Siva breaks entirely for the original Siva member. So I cannot argue with the Mitch vote out, as boring as it is, and as much as the edit is built up kind of Joe and Eva at this point.
I really hate to do this, but like, I'm going to trust them on that. God, I hate doing that. I hate saying that.
I said you ceded the moral high ground, and you have.
Yeah,
that's twice now.
Yeah, I know. It just makes me feel gross. But I'm gonna trust them on this judgment, just because, because we see it in the end that they're correct, that their game stands up against Joe and Eva's. Now, from Joe and Eva's perspective, you know, that gets into the type of game that they're playing and whether or not, you know, cutting someone like Kyle is what that is going to look like, and how that's going to be able to, you know, stand up against their thesis of how they're playing the game once final tribal council comes around. Sometimes you just have to fully commit all out to the type of game that you're playing. So that's all I got. Now, the one thing that I will say, maybe an argument for taking out Joe when it comes to Kyle and Camilla is an alternate reality where they're both at final tribal council. I think that they being, either Kyle or Camilla, let's just say one of them goes up against Joe and Eva in the end, regardless of which one of them it is, they get the benefit of Joe and Eva having split votes and also not having someone on their side who is splitting with them. So if it's Kyle and Camilla sitting next to each other, yeah, we got the, kind of impromptu poll that Camilla beats Joe and Eva at the end. But what if Kyle's next to her?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
She might still win, but does Kyle pull 1 or 2 votes and then they don't win? And it's the third, whoever that third person is, that ends up coming out on top. I don't know. So it might be in their best interest to, commit to just taking out that wild card too. It's so hard to know here.
Vote out Kyle. Vote out Kyle. No, it's very clear. I disagree. I think it's so clear to vote out Kyle here, and it bothers me that they went with Mitch. But yeah, it's so obvious that they all end up telling him, like, yeah, Mitch, you're going. And it's one of the quickest tribal councils ever. We're going to go there, and it is very clear Mitch is going. Mitch is going to tell us he has no regrets, and I shouted, you should have many.
I think he has regrets. He is lying.
More key, I think, is when he was having his little sidebar with Kyle, and he's like, I should have made a move. Yes. True.
As you yourself, Mitch, have been saying for the past 5 episodes, I don't even know how long he's been saying, like, we need to make a move, proceeds to not literally make a move the entire time.
You know what? Mitch really did play this entire game for Monica. This one's for Monica.
Yeah, Mitch got exactly what he deserved, going out at 5th, everyone telling him to his face and no one willing to make a move to save him because he never made a move. I was very annoyed by Mitch this season.
One last thing that's just, annoying as long as we're complaining about it is, okay, people tell you to your face that you're going home. This is Survivor. This is the final 5. Try. Just do something. Literally anything, please. It's probably not going to work, but just saying, oh gosh darn, well, it's just because I'm so likable and I can live with that. And I'm going to go home knowing that I never made a move. And I'm not even going to try to keep myself in the game. No, that's not playing Survivor. Come on.
And I think this lends a little bit of credence to, like, yeah, you want to be likable at the end, but you want to have, like, one little personality flaw so you're not, like, this perfect specimen of a person who obviously get taken out at some point. You got to have, like, one kind of character flaw about you. You don't want it to be too extreme, but, like, one thing is, like, fine.
Mitch maybe made it to 5 because he wasn't making moves, but I mean, this is kind of like the Caleb effect from a couple seasons ago. If you are too social and too nice and too willing to talk with people and connect with them, that's kind of like the Andrew Savage vote now. Like, I understand that those challenge threats are still merge boots, but it could just as easily be an Ellie. It could just as easily be a Caleb or a Mitch now if they have their teeth in the game as well, not just their heart.
Don't be too likable. It's a fine balance. Eva's going to play her idol because obviously, but it's going to be 4 votes for Mitch, 1 for Kyle. It should have been Kyle. Final answer.
I have kind of a hard time with it just because if we're applying retrospective logic, like in the moment, I would say, yeah, because we're omnipotent, keep Mitch and send Kyle home. But in retrospect, if they say that Camilla could win, it's because she's got that underdog story and she was outside of that mega alliance. Mitch was also outside of that mega alliance, and if he makes it to the end and Siva preferred him, maybe he could have done it. So in the moment, Ryan, I agreed with you, and I said this was the wrong move. At the end of the season, I want to let our listeners know that I'm not positive anymore.
Well, Camilla actually had moves she could talk about at her final, if she'd got to the final 12 council. Mitch has nothing.
Fair.
I'm going to go with wrong move just because, yes, they all think that he could win in the end, but everyone could win in the end, if they explain a perfect game, to perfection to any member of the jury. They just need to appeal to the right people with the right story. So yes, in theory, Mitch could maybe win, but are there more threatening people out there? Yes, there are. So I'm going to say wrong move.
Okay, what did social media have to say?
Yeah, so combination across various social medias was about 87%. of people said, no, the wrong person went home here.
And the other percent was Kyle.
Or Joe. Who knows?
All right, let's get to best and worst player of the final 5. Derek, kick us off. Who is your best player?
In the moment, I said Joe, first of all, because he had been built up as kind of this big threat. In hindsight, with the end of the season, I'm going to say that it was Kyle. Both of them were available. Literally, my notes say Joe, I guess, Kyle, maybe. It could also be no one, depending on how the season ends. So I'm going to switch my answer to Kyle with the benefit of hindsight. But the fact that neither of those guys went home here based on what we've seen so far surprised me greatly, that it ended up being Mitch. And that's a credit, I guess, to the alliance they've built with each other and with with Camilla and with Eva. So
I think that's really fair. I went with Camilla here. I think the immunity win is really big as far as just resume building if you make it to the end. Having that second one puts her past Kyle, puts her past, Eva. Did Eva win one or two? Yeah.
One.
Just one. So that really helps that category. Also, it was very subtle. I don't remember who it was, if it was Joe or Eva, but earlier in the episode had mentioned voting for Camilla in this next vote. So in her winning immunity just kind of just throws all that out the window. When we talked about passing up, Mitch for Kyle, if Kyle wins immunity here, does Mitch get passed up for Camilla? Maybe. So, I'm not saying that she saved herself or anything, but just taking that option off the table, I think, is just so big at Final 5.
My best player is Kyle. He should have gone home here. He survived and really wasn't even talked about at all, really. So I have Kyle. Josh, who do you have for worst player?
And I can't give it to Mitch.
Nope.
I really wish I could give it to Mitch. Gosh, I don't like it. I'm going to go with Eva here just because going into the finale, she's the lowest, at least, other than Mitch, on my rankings of who can win the game, just power rankings wise. So she needs to be taking out big threats. Mitch is someone who I think that she can beat in the end. And while I still thought that she didn't have a chance to win going in, this is just going to make it one extra step harder for her. So she needs to, I don't think there's a world where she would take out Joe. So, someone like Kyle would make a lot more sense for her.
Yeah, so I had considered Eva, Camilla, and Joe for this because I thought all three of them made the wrong move in taking out Mitch instead of Kyle. And so I was thinking through it, like, what are the tie-breaking situations? Eva won the challenge advantage, that's something. Camilla won immunity, that's great. Joe didn't really have anything to break the tie, so just based on that, I'm going to give Joe my worst player.
In real time, I gave it to Eva because I said she pretty definitively loses the game here, and I still think that's true. But after the votes came out, Joe definitively lost the game here, in my opinion. So with the benefit of hindsight, I would change my answer to Joe. In real time, it was Eva, but really it's the Joe and Eva power duo that lost here. And maybe Mitch could have beat them anyway, and they lost a long time ago. But either way, then they needed Kyle or Camilla, who had immunity, to go home to give themselves the best chance going forward. Because like Ryan said, at least Mitch wasn't making any moves.
Yep.
So I'm going with what I wrote down initially, which is Eva, but with hindsight, I would have had Joe.
You have the whole episode to work with. I think you can change it.
If I have the whole episode to work with, then I'm going to say that, yeah, Joe was the worst here.
This season is going to be so interesting just looking back on and deciding, whether or not right people went home or, who people can beat in the end, just because, when you have two duos colliding here at Final 4, the combination matters, like I was saying before. So, can Eva win in the end? Maybe she can. Maybe she can win the game if Joe goes home and she's up against Kyle and Camilla, who, might split votes, or, then there's a lot more respect on her game because she's not sitting next to Joe, whatever that might look like. So that's so hard for at least me to think about as far as, whether or not the move is correct for someone based on if they can win the game still. And which is wild to think, just because we're talking about final 5 here, like we're so close to the end. But I do think that still matters.
At the Final 4, Camilla is going to tell Kyle that she thinks they might split jury votes. So if she wins immunity, she's going to send him to fire. And Kyle said, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Yeah, let's do that. In hindsight, maybe shouldn't have said that.
Don't say this. No, like don't say this until after you win the challenge, because what if Kyle feels guilty? What if Kyle feels guilty sending you to fire? Even if it is best for his game, he might think, gosh, I need to go to the end with Camilla just because like I want one of us to win, and I think that is our best chance, and I really don't want to send Camilla home in fire. You don't know what he's thinking, so don't give him that moral out.
Yep.
I disagree actually pretty strongly. I think when it's Kyle and Camilla, it's because Joe and Eva, they're this strong duo to the end, no matter what. They don't even seem to care if they win, and they're going to end up reaping that exact reward about not caring about whether or not they win. Kyle and Camilla both realize, and they're smart, we could split votes with Siva. We played the same game. We've always talked about like removing the X factor, which is the person who played the same game as you. Bring the people to the end who played a different game as you and hope the jury respect your game more. We've been saying this since season like 3 or 4. They know this. They're going to do this. And sometimes in Survivor, you just have to take your swing. So I don't care if they say it before. I don't care if they say it after. I don't think they can go to the end with each other, and I think they know that.
Dirk, I was 100% with you until you said, like, it doesn't matter if they say it to each other. It absolutely matters because you don't know 100% the other person is on the same page as you. Like Josh said, Kyle could have felt guilty. And yeah, you don't want to go to the end with Kyle and you could split. But if Kyle wins immunity and is going to the end, you still want to go to the end too. It's not like you can eliminate Kyle at that point.
I think you take the swing, though. You're guaranteeing that, like, there's a chance you don't go with that person by trying to create the bad blood. Like, it's not bad blood. It's just, hey, we can't go to the end with each other if we can help it. So we need to do whatever we can to not do that. So by that respect, Camilla should want Kyle to send her to fire to build her game up a little bit more if he has that power. And Kyle should want the exact same thing for Camilla to put him in fire.
No. You should not be doing anything that, encourages people to put you in fire. Yes, can it be something that sets you apart from someone else? Sure, but let's not work under that assumption here. Some jurors might think that way. But I feel like,
and they're idiots.
As a baseline, you shouldn't work under that type of thought process. You should be working on as many ways as possible to get to final tribal council, whether it's making a deal with someone or just not saying anything because you had a pre-existing deal, and hoping that person still wants to honor that. You see Kyle go up to Joe and say, hey, I'm going to bring you to the end. If Camilla doesn't bring up what she's thinking, he could potentially have 2 routes to the end now. If Joe says like, yeah, I'll do the same for you. You really don't know.
Yeah, Camilla slams the door here. And yeah, okay, there might be a situation after immunity challenge where she wants to go to fire. That could happen maybe. I don't know. Shut that door after the immunity challenge. Just leave your options open.
All right, well, I've settled my mind on this now, and I think I know what I think should have happened, and you guys are both going to disagree with me, and this is going to be one of my Derek takes for the season. Kyle and Camilla should have done fire against each other no matter what. It doesn't matter who wins immunity. They should have done fire against each other to ensure that only one of them goes to the end so that they don't split votes.
This isn't a blood versus water season where you're going to go home with the loved one and, so you don't care who wins the $1 million. No, it's someone else who is going to win Survivor and you're going to get 4th place.
It's not about that. To me, this is very similar to when Richard Hatch stepped out of the challenge and forced Kelly Wigglesworth to vote out Rudy. To me, it's a lot like that, where if you are putting the jury in this position where they have to try and decide between 2 people with the same game, you need to take your swing to win now. And that was Richard, as Ryan so aptly put it. That was a must that he had to do. He had to step out of that challenge and turn Kelly Wigglesworth into the bad guy. They need the other person to be gone. If Camilla wins and she sits next to Kyle, there's absolutely no guarantee then that Joe doesn't win. I think that they needed to face each other in fire no matter what.
A, no. B, we didn't even need to get there.
I knew you guys were going to say this, but I still feel this is true.
It's okay to be wrong.
The point was, going all the way back to the original point, Camilla should not have said this to Kyle.
And I don't mind that she did.
I do.
I very much do. So we're going to go to the immunity challenge, which is Samotion, and Kyle's going to end up winning that one. So Kyle's going to the end, and he is going to take Joe to the end and tells him so. So he's going to make Camilla and Eva make fire. So they're going to go practice, as you do. Eva is having a really hard time and has a bit of a meltdown about it, which Joe and Kyle hear, and Joe's going to go comfort her. We're going to get both Joe offers to take Eva's spot and put himself to fire in her place. And even Kyle's going to say, like, should I go into fire in Eva's place and go against Camilla myself? And I'm like, I'm done with this season. I'm done. I'm fed up. I've had it. I'm so annoyed at this point. I'm just like, I'm done with this crap. Like, okay, how about this? You know, since everyone's such best friends and all that stuff, how about next season we put 18 people on an island and vote no one out and everyone's besties? Let's do that. That's a great idea.
I don't think Kyle was ever seriously considering
He said it.
going to fire. And if he was, I think the only reason would be because he didn't think that Eva could take out Camilla. And maybe he thought that he needed to be the one to take out Camilla. And if that's the case, if he thought that Eva doesn't have a chance and Joe doesn't have a chance, and the only way that he wins the game is if Camilla's not in the final 3, then I think that that's a different conversation. But I do not think that Kyle was doing it to be like the good guy. Joe, on the other hand, yeah, he 100% was.
I know Ryan went online, and the vast majority of the chronically online community seems to agree with him on this. This is just people moments. That there is somebody going through a really hard time, and they are all very close. They have dominated this game together, even if Camilla's form of dominance was more in the shadows, less openly dominant. They care about each other. And this is how it comes out in these expressions of emotion. The producers are prompting them, what does this make you feel when your decision has somebody crying in the jungle? And you've got people who are nice and caring and empathetic and just good all around people. And they didn't make the wrong move. So like all much to do about nothing is the complaining about this part of the episode. It's just showing and illustrating their relationships with each other. I liked this a lot. And you know what? If it would have come to pass, that would have been a perfect arc for Joe, because he would have gotten to have his protective arc. Would have that undermined Eva's independence arc? Yes, it would have. That didn't happen. She spoke out for herself. I need to do this. And that was the arc, was that you don't always need to protect people. You don't always need to do the thing that your emotions compel you to do. I think that people who hated this part of the episode don't appreciate that aspect, and they're getting too hung up on what is the right move.
Look, things can be real and authentic and still annoying as hell.
And it wasn't, but it's not annoying to me.
I'm happy for you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Derek. This was so irritating. I was so done with this season at this point. Look, these emotional and real connections are wonderful and stuff, but man, there's too much of that crap this season. We need some more cutthroat people out here who are just ready to cut people. Like, yeah, I'm sad they're crying, but that's Survivor.
Yeah, but the nice people cut Thomas and Bianca early on.
What a goddamn shame.
But it's not a shame.
Oh, it's such a shame.
Like, maybe the cutthroat people should have been less stupid and they wouldn't have gotten voted out.
Look, that's fair. That's fair. But I could still be incredibly irritated and fed up with these people at this point, which I am. I'm so done.
For the record, I'm on Derek's side with this one. I was not irritated by this. I thought it was a good, genuine human moment, and I'm glad we got the result of one person just kind of keeping as consistent with their personality as possible compared to the rest of the season, and then the other person saying, no, I can do this. Even if Eva would have lost, that is great to see, and it would have been a great closure to her game. So no, I enjoyed this from an entertainment perspective. I was still rooting for either Kyle or Camilla to win the entire thing, so at that point I'm just here for good TV.
I think part of the problem at this point for me is I had completely lost all interest in who won. I just wasn't invested anymore, and that was part of the problem. It's just like, I don't care.
I don't know how you weren't invested.
Because I was irritated with these people. Like, I was just, I don't know. I kind of stopped caring at this point. I was like, whatever, just let's finish this thing.
This is maybe what it would have been like to watch One World with Ryan live.
Yeah, this felt a lot like One World live at this point. It's like, I don't care at all who wins. In One World, at least, like, Kim should win. I don't care, but she should win. I guess that's kind of how I feel here. I'm like, I don't care who wins. Kyle should probably win, but I don't care. So yeah, there's a lot of One World comparisons here for me. They're more likable than the people on One World for sure, but almost to the detriment of the show. They're too likable. It's almost like, come on, let's have some chaos. Let's a little bit of conflict. I'm bored. I don't know. This just is not for me. How about this? Let's get rid of fire making, and then we have a little bit more interest. Like, are we just going to straight up vote out Camilla? Kyle going to force a tie with her and let her go to fire? She gets to plead her case. Kyle, we're buddies. Let's go to let me at least go to fire. Like that's way more interesting.
By the way, if fire making is not a thing, then I would say that Camilla probably shouldn't be telling Kyle about her plans, because then you want to opt to be forced into fire making. Like that changes everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So the short answer is let's get rid of fire making.
That's the full circle moment.
As
Castaway
it always
Consultants
is.
It's a horseshoe.
So yeah, listeners, let us know. Did you like this Final Four drama with Eva, Joe, and Kyle, or did you hate it like me? I'm curious. Let us know.
Please do. Spotify and anywhere on the social medias.
So, yeah, Joe's gonna go offer to put himself in fire for her, but she refuses. She's gonna do it herself, but he does mentor her. So, at Tribal Council, Kyle's gonna bring Joe to the end, and it's gonna be Eva versus Camilla. Eva is gonna get her nice fire going, but then it starts dying down again, which frequently happens, and she starts crying again, and everyone's really comforting her. And what I found interesting is I thought this might be a bad look in front of the jury, like you needed other people to support you so much to be able to do this, you couldn't do it on your own kind of thing. I thought that's might be where this going, but that's not what happened. Star votes for Eva because of this moment that she kept persevering and fighting, like even through the tears. So I found that interesting.
Yeah, I was worried that the same thing would happen. I like that it didn't, though, because I think there are things where it's like, okay, Eva is herself. She's not hiding anything. She was never hiding anything, and this is just another part of her experience that she's not hiding. And because she doesn't try and conceal this in Final Tribal, she owns, again, her mistakes. She owns what she did well. I'm glad that this was not held against her as a flaw in her game.
Ultimately, Eva is going to make the fire, and Camilla goes out of the game at 4.
And then I did end up asking whether or not it was the correct decision to send these two people to fire, which we didn't really talk about whether or not Kyle made the correct decision. I think that sending Camilla was the correct decision, at least for sure. Whether it's Eva or Joe, what do you guys think?
I think that the results bear it out, unfortunately. If we're working with the whole episode, Joe got 1 vote, Eva got 2. She put Camilla and Eva, the two by the votes, seemingly biggest competitors to his game, into fire, and you can't do better than that. So I'm going to say that it was the right choice.
I think Kyle's best move is to put Camilla up against the best fire maker. I don't know who that is, but it worked out, so sure, I guess.
Yeah, we didn't really get any of that information as far as who's the most skilled fire maker, so gotta trust him on that side. However, 75% of social media said no.
Okay.
The wrong people were sent.
All right, let's get into best and worst player of the Final Four. I'll start us off this time. My best player is Kyle. He won immunity. I think he made the right calls with fire.
Yeah, well, and to your point, you even said, I think Kyle just won the game.
Yeah, I did say that after Kyle won immunity. I think Kyle just won the game.
And you were right. I don't know if he gained or lost votes at Final Tribal, but you were right. I said, yep, Kyle kind of winning in at this point. And if you think you've played the best game, it doesn't really matter what happens here on out.
Kyle wasn't necessarily a win in just because, I'm going to always be curious and we're never going to get the answer of what happens if Camilla wins fire making. But he did everything that he needed to do. He won immunity and he sent the person who he couldn't go up against into fire, and that person ended up losing. So yeah, Kyle.
How about worst player, Dirk?
I didn't have one. Weirdly enough, I think the best thing for everybody that could have happened in this situation happened. Kyle wins as the biggest threat and gives himself a chance to fight for the million. Camilla gets a chance to go into fire, save her game, and defend for, I guess you could say, it'd been better for Camilla to win, but let's just assume that Kyle wins. Camilla gets a chance to make fire, win and in, have the underdog story over and above the fact that she's been working secretly with Kyle. Eva gets to make fire and add to her resume, and Joe gets to lean more into the fact that, I was viewed as this really big threat, and he brought me to the end anyway because of the social connection I made with him. This is something that I'm going to criticize, whether it's the edit or Joe's Final Tribal Council performance. I was impressed that as the big, strong guy who wore his heart on his sleeve and said everything that he was going to do ahead of time and was a target for a while, they just brought him to the end. So I said no bad players in this part.
I'm giving it to Joe. Eva did everything that, she needed to. She looked good as far as making the fire and kind of persevering through any personal struggles that she was having with it. Joe, as we're going to see, is going to be a 1 vote third place finalist. I'm not saying that, he should have gone to Kyle and been like, hey, put me into fire, because I just said 10 minutes ago that no one should ever do that. But he told Eva that he would. He volunteered to take her spot. Now, she said no, but what if she took him up on that offer? Joe could have seen his way out of this game in fourth place. So because of that, there isn't, and there, like Derek said, there isn't a whole lot else here. So because of that, I'm going to give it to Joe.
Josh, you make a very compelling point. You almost won me over with that fact, but I'm going to give it to no one. I do agree with everything Derek said, but very good job. Very good argument, Josh.
How was that not enough, though? Especially for you, like,
because Joe's social bond got him to the end, and I'm like, that's good enough for me to not put him in the negative category. So, and maybe the one thing we don't know is if Joe had gone into fire and won, maybe it would have helped his game. I mean, it certainly would have, but like it could have helped his game if he won. Like that one's a little iffy, but that was pretty good. I like it. But yeah, I do agree with you, Derek. Josh, we lost our winner pick. Camilla's out.
It was a good run.
So we got to make our new winner picks.
Yep.
Who was yours?
And as a reminder, we both started with Thomas, right?
Yep.
And we
Thomas
both moved
to
on to Camilla. So me and Ryan have been in lockstep this entire season, and I have a feeling we're going to be after this as well. I'm going from Camilla to Isle. I think that, the way that the final three is shaking up. And yes, I did message these guys beforehand. This isn't, retroactive or anything. In real time, I made sure to jot it down that I was switching to Kyle, just because one, the edit has been screaming that. I've been saying it the past like 4 or 5 episodes that I thought either Kyle or Camilla was going to win this game. Now that Camilla's out, that belongs to Kyle. Everything belongs to Kyle edit wise now. So it was a pretty easy decision for me.
Everything Josh just said, I also moved on to Kyle. Josh, we did it.
We did it. Too easy.
And Derek, day one pick was Joe. Never had a chance to switch it up. Sucks to suck.
See, I don't consider this a loss. Picking a guy like Joe on day one and making it to Final Tribal, like, that is an impressive poll for Survivor.
It's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty impressive. But Josh and I still win.
No, you don't win. It's a silly game. Win. That's not how that works.
We're the best around, right, Josh?
Oh, of course. I mean, Derek, I did say that you had a terrible winner pick in the premiere and that there's no chance that Joe's going to win the game.
I also said that.
And I was correct. He did not win the game.
Yeah, and it only took you guys 3 tries to allegedly win the game.
All right. Final 3, baby. Before we get to Final Tribal Council, this was kind of funny. This might have been my favorite moment of the episode. Eva's going to tell Kyle and Joe, like, hey, by the way, I'm not actually a teacher like I told you guys. I am a PhD student, and I'm doing all this stuff. And Kyle's like, funny enough, I'm also not a teacher. I'm a lawyer. And Joe's just like, who are these people?
I'm a fire captain. What?
Joe's face was just amazing, just laying down, just like, who are you people?
This is like twist. Oh my God, who are these people? Everybody's lying except me.
Final Tribal Council time. Cedric wants to know about their weaknesses. Eva's going to talk about the episode she has that stem from her autism, and she counterbalanced that by using that and basically being so open and honest with people, so they would be open and honest with her, choosing allies that would support her in that endeavor. Joe says, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I lean into that, I own it, and it gave me empathy. And Kyle says, he's like, I'm overconfident. I had a rough start in those first 2 parts of the opening challenge, lost badly, learned from that. If you're going to have a bad start, those first 2 challenging things, that's not the worst place to have a bad start, especially if you're a strong guy. Learn early. Chrissy kind of wants to see Joe and Eva separate themselves from each other. And basically, they just kind of say, we're not going to take jabs at each other. We're just going to prop up our own games. That's kind of the mentality we had. So that kind of gets shut down. We're not going to get a Joe and Eva fight ever. Not that I expected one.
I thought Joe explained this a lot better than what Eva did. Eva pushed back a little bit more on Chrissy's question, whereas Joe explained his way through it, I thought, just more effectively.
Star wants to know what secret moves they haven't revealed yet. Eva's going to reveal the Safety Without Power mission, and that she didn't need to play it and wanted to just stay in and vote and protect her alliance. I thought this was going to be where Kyle revealed the whole Shaheen thing and the Camilla thing. Nope, he's going to reveal that he has spent time in jail and is now a lawyer, and then Eva's going to reveal she was a PhD student. So, yeah, this went in a route I was not expecting at all.
Yeah, it bounced back and forth because Eva's reveal about the Safety Without Power sneak out at night advantage seemed to really get people's attention. That was like, oh, okay, all right, there's parts of your games that we weren't as aware of, and there's more here than what meets the eye. So I think that this is where before Kyle chimes in, that maybe the game started shifting towards Eva a little bit.
I felt that.
And I think the whole Kyle saying he's a lawyer and then Eva saying that she's a doctor or whatever, I don't think that really added a whole lot to people's, decision making. It was just kind of funny that it like bounced back and forth. So this is where, it starts with Eva and then to Kyle and then back to Eva. I thought Kyle was then going to chime in just one more time of just like, all right, well, I'll try to one up you as well. And then reveal the whole like relationship with Camilla.
And I think that's huge to be a consultant here for a second. If you can go to your final tribal council with a secret that you could reveal, like a magician revealing his secrets at final tribal council, I think that's huge. The thing is, you have to be like the final secret. Like if you reveal something, kind of like Eva's going to do in a second here, but then somebody else reveals like, actually, I was above you on masterminding this whole thing. So you got to be sure your secret is the right one, I suppose, or at least what happened was truly in your control and not you weren't being played by somebody else.
Yeah, because what did we see a couple of seasons ago where someone like kind of like revealed something? It's like, well, actually,
Cassidy.
And like someone's on the jury is just like, yeah, it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, that's kind of why Cassidy lost to Gabler. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to her.
So you got to be really careful about what you choose your secret. I will also say that a gameplay secret, to me, has a lot more weight than a advantage secret. So having a safety without power doesn't do as much for me as, being the mastermind behind a move.
Yeah, I agree. But if, let's say, Kyle didn't have that mastermind move, Eva's got the biggest secret, maybe she gets another vote. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a really effective way to garner jury votes, especially in this era. People want to learn something they don't know from Ponderosa.
Mm-hmm.
Mary is going to ask them what they think the jury's perception of them are. And Eva's like, I think people see me as Joe's +1, but I'm not. I have a different game. And David wants examples of this. So Eva's going to bring up the Shaheen vote and that she pushed it the most and tries to take credit for it. And we get a great moment of Camilla mouthing to Kyle, I got you. I got you. Must be pretty nice to have like your bestie on the jury. Like that's got to be a good feeling.
And especially a bestie who is not bitter towards you and is ready and willing to champion your, and if not like their game at the same time.
A little bit of an alley-oop.
Yeah, the benefit of having that kind of relationship, not to relitigate this, but like going into Final Four, like I'm putting you in fire. Clearly they had the relationship to where it was going to be good between them no matter what, come hell or high water. So if you can have that kind of jury management on the jury advocating for you, not a bad person to put on the jury in Survivor.
Mm-hmm. Camilla's going to give Kyle the floor, basically, and Kyle's going to reveal everything that happened with him and Shaheen, and then framing him to possibly have an idol, and that was all Kyle and Camilla, and it reveals their whole relationship and how close they actually are. This is the best moment of the Final Tribal Council. I think it's what when Kyle's the game, if he hadn't already won. It's pretty great.
I'm not sure if he had won the game yet, actually.
I don't know.
To this point, maybe it was really split. Maybe, we're sitting at like a 4-4. Whatever, or 4-3-1, who knows. The one thing that I'll say is he did a great job like explaining everything. He got his wow moment. I'm surprised that this was the only time that it was talked about. Like I wish there was more hitting on him and Camilla being number ones. Like he didn't even toss out like number one as like that ally just to hit home even more. It was more so just like, Camilla and I were working together the entire game. That could mean a lot of things. So, maybe that just wasn't shown in the edit, but I really hope that there was like more talked about this relationship just because it was the biggest secret in the game and it was the strongest gameplay move in the entire game, in my opinion.
Finally, we have David, who's just looked furious since he got voted out.
Just mean mugging for like 5 straight votes.
And I was really expecting him to come out guns blazing and kind of confront Joe on his honor and integrity strategy, but still voting out David. That does not happen at all. David tells a knock-knock joke and reveals he's not actually pissed. We're never going to address Joe's betrayal of David, however you want to describe that. It never gets brought up, so maybe David was already like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm voting for Kyle. Nothing matters. I'm not going to bring it up. But it's interesting that was never... If it did get brought up, it wasn't shown at all, which was very surprising to me. I thought that reckoning was for sure coming.
Well, especially since leading up to Final Tribal, how we now in the new era get all the jury members just kind of like pre-final tribal like little quotes that they have about each person, I'm pretty sure David had like said something about Joe owning his game. So it was surprising that none of that came up from David or anyone else regarding Joe's game.
Finally, we get some final comments. Kyle's just basically going to say he played a very well-rounded game. Joe played a strong physical, social game and made it to the end even with the big target on his back. Eva says, this is a unique season. I would be a unique winner. You've never had a winner like me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think all three were really great arguments.
Yeah, but Kyle is going to win out 5-1. Eva's going to get 2 votes from Mary and Star, and Cedric is going to vote for Joe. So the question is, guys, who would we have voted for? I would have voted for Kyle because best social and strategic game. Joe had the best physical game, but yeah, I think Kyle had the best social strategic game.
I've been fairly quiet through the discussion of our final tribal council because this is I guess the part that I'm really locked on, because I brought up what happened at the end here with Kyle winning, and he's a deserving winner. He played a really, really good game. He played the middle. He had secrets. He was strategic. He was targeted. He outdrew Shaheen. He outdrew David. But this Joe kind of played Terry Dietz's game. Superman, loyal, honest, but he made it to the end. And exactly what Derek said back in season 12, the jury just kind of invalidated that game. They just decided that that is not what they valued most on season 48 of Survivor, which any jury obviously has the right to do. I don't know that I actually want to do it because it's such a hard game to play. I would have voted for Kyle, but for one reason, and I'm locking onto this, I think Kyle did a much better job of making everybody in the game feel like he was willing to play with them if the time was right. And I think Joe's stalwart, stoic, honest, I'm not voting with you approach, well, honorable, doesn't exactly garner goodwill in the moment if you're trying to win the $1 million. And that, I think, was Joe's fatal flaw, was he was not entertaining other people's games as much as he should have. Him and Eva both. So they got 3 of the 8 votes with the quote-unquote like Terry Dietz strategy. But the person who was giving the most hope and had the best social game won out, at least the most flexible social game. And I think that might be the lesson to learn when everybody left had a darn good social game in their own right. So I would have very likely voted for Kyle unless I was like in Joe's alliance and I went up head to head against him and then lost to him. Then I would give him a respect vote. Any other situation though, I think I'm going Kyle, but I needed to get this off my chest because it is hard for me to watch this game get invalidated, and it's probably because I picked Joe to win, and so I've been tracking him closely all season. So yeah, that's why I've been quiet for a while.
David Bloomberg has said for a long time, like, one of the biggest things you need to have in Survivor is flexibility. Joe is not flexible.
Right.
As far as who I would have voted for, I think it would have been tough on the island just because I think that Joe could have done a lot better job at explaining his game because, I do agree that obviously Joe had the best physical game and Kyle, I do think, had a better social game. But then when you look at strategic, what is strategy? Like Joe and Eva had a strategy. It wasn't, making these big moves or anything, but they had a clear strategy and it worked. It worked solidly throughout the post-merge, and it is why Ryan hated the post-merge. It's because it was boring because it worked so well, and I don't think he explained that well enough in the end. Clearly, as I'm talking about this, I would choose I'm choosing between either Kyle or Joe, but it's I think that game, like Derek is saying, is a lot easier to invalidate just because there aren't any, big flashy moves. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that I would vote for Kyle because of really one vote, and that's the Shaheen vote. It's great that he kept his alliance with Camilla undercover and he had that nice reveal and no one really knew that they were working together. But when it came down to it, having that move and having it be done in a way that Joe and Eva had no idea what was going on and they were lied to by Kyle and Camilla, and it was this nice orchestrated plan that worked to vote out one of their close allies. Boom. Like there you go. Like that is enough for me to separate him from the strategy, the very real strategy that Joe and Eva had throughout this game. And I would feel pretty good about it.
Really important question for you guys, I think, then. Surprise final two, Kyle goes home. Joe and Eva. I think Joe wins.
I also think Joe wins that one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't fight very hard and then maybe Eva wins. But if Joe tries to win in a surprise final two, I do think he wins.
I think it would be like a 5-4 split because there'd be 9 on the jury at that point. I think a lot of the votes that went to Kyle would go to Joe because Kyle did embody a lot of the same things that Joe did. I just think he did a better job at making the people at the bottom feel like they had hope, and connecting with more people on a game level as well as a personal level. So,
are you saying who we would vote for, or what you think the result would have been?
What you think the result would have been on the island. So, like with the 5 votes that went to Kyle, and then Kyle's vote, I think Kyle votes for Joe. So I think that makes it 2-2. What happens to Kyle's 5 votes? I think that David goes probably for Joe. I think Shaheen probably goes for Joe. Like, I think it's a 5-4 split, but I think Joe would inherit a lot of those votes. It's just something that I was thinking of as we were talking about it. Like, Joe got third. Eva earned second. She earned it. I'm not taking it away from her. I just wonder, did Joe actually have kind of the second best game except for the 2 people who voted for Eva?
The vibe of the jury kind of makes me feel like they would have gone to Eva. In that scenario, I would vote for Joe, but it just seemed like people were responding more positively to Eva's game than Joe's just during Final Tribal.
But yeah, going back to Joe's strategy, there's just one flaw with Joe's strategy, really. And I think if he had been on a season with smarter people on the bottom, there would have been a flip. I think he had a lot of duds on the bottom and weren't playing great. So yeah, Joe's strategy worked, but it was more like other people failed to do anything about it. So that is worth noting for me. And that's kind of the difference between Kyle and Joe for me. But let's get into best and worst player of the season. As a reminder, we only do people, the only eligible people here are people who made the merge. And I know that is a debate technically. It shouldn't be. Charity and Onward made the merge. So best player of the season. Derek, who do you got?
It's Kyle, no question.
Josh.
I'm going to give it to Kyle. I'm very, very close to giving it to Camilla though, but I'm going to go Kyle.
Yeah, I think Camilla's second, but yeah, it's Kyle.
Yeah, I would agree that Camilla is second.
Yeah,
I don't think that there was a whole lot though that distinguished Kyle over Camilla, other than timing of an immunity win. That was really it.
For me, Kyle infiltrated the strong alliance by actually integrating and clutch time. I think those are the big 2. Camilla had the underdog story, so those are the pros cons, I think.
All right, worst player of the season, Josh. Who do you got?
Okay, so you're saying that anyone Charity and On is eligible?
Yes.
Okay.
What we can do is if you pick someone early who didn't make the jury, you could also throw in the dishonorable mention from somebody who made the jury phase. If people want to hear that, you could do that too.
Cool. I would love to do that.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. Spoilers.
Because I'm giving it to Say.
Yeah.
Say's getting it, and dishonorable mention to Cedric, who was originally going to be who I said, just because I thought I was only thinking of people on the jury, both just with, bottom tier games. I'm so glad that they went out where they did. We had really enjoyable and entertaining pre-merges because of them. And who knows, maybe it would have made the post-merge a little bit more exciting if they would have made it a little bit further, but I didn't really want them to make it any further just because of the types of games that they were playing. So I'm going Say.
Yeah, my worst is also Say. My dishonorable mention, Cedric would be my second dishonorable mention. My first one's going to Mitch. I was so frustrated with Mitch this whole season that I'm giving it to him.
For my worst of the season, I gave it to Cedric. And I'm going to say even over Say, because Say's game would have been over so much earlier if not for the consistently unintelligible gameplay from Cedric. I mean, the first guy in history to vote for 5 of his tribe mates in 4 tribal councils. Perhaps like an untouchable record. And while he seems like a nice enough guy, we said early and often he was too nice for Survivor. Say what you want about Say, she's not too nice for Survivor. There is a world where someone like Say can win with the right concoction of people. I don't know that there's ever a world where Cedric can win. At least it would be, man, that shot's a 1 in a million. Nice shot, kid. That's 1 in a million. So I'm just going to go ahead and hang my hat on Cedric and feel comfortable. My dishonorable mention is to Mitch because he's doing it for Monica.
All right. Jeff Watch.
Just very self-referential season. Obviously, he had the moment where he was crying by connecting with Eva. But yeah, that was it. I would like for Survivor to scale back on like the referentiality, whatever you want to call it. I want Survivor to dial it back on like worshiping itself, the self-worship. Like, okay, let's just let the people be people, and then if they talk about Survivor, great. But like, talk about Survivor less, talk about the people more.
Weather report, anything to note?
No, I think it rained once.
Okay. Last thing we got to check in is the most memorable moment of the season. Josh, as our memorability correspondent, what are you thinking here?
I think there's going to be one pretty clear-cut moment. It's going to be when tribal lines were broken and Joe went to comfort Eva at the challenge. That's going to be the one, just thinking right now. I didn't do a whole lot of thinking beforehand on these most memorable moments, and that was immediately the first one that came to mind for me. I don't know if you guys have any other like nominations or anything you want to bring up, but it's going to be pretty hard to beat.
I think that one's slam dunk.
I mean, what about all of the memorable vote outs that happened in the post-merge? All of the flips
all the big moves that Mitch made.
Oh yeah, all of Mitch's huge moves.
The tumble dry with players on the bottom constantly usurping people on the top. The power vacuums, Operation Italy 2.0, Cowboys. What is it?
Plan Voodoo.
Plan Voodoo.
Plan Voodoo.
No, Josh, you're 100% right.
Okay. That was easy.
That was easy.
Let's hear some questions.
Cool. So yeah, we got a couple of questions on social media. First up from Blake, assuming season 50 is a huge rating success, will we see pressure from the network to do mostly returnee seasons in the future?
That's interesting because that had kind of been Survivor's MO. If we have a successful returner player season, we get back into returner player seasons. All-Star, people didn't like All-Stars, took a while to get back to it. But like Heroes vs. Villains, everyone loved it except me. And then we had just a crap ton of returning seasons in a row. But then you have a really great, amazing season of newbies like Kageyan, and then we do a lot of newbie seasons in a row. So that had kind of been the MO of Survivor. Game Changers sucked. We didn't do a ton of returnees for a while until 40. But then everyone loved Winners at War, and we didn't do any returnees, and we haven't, which is that is mind-blowing to me. So that really changed the pattern up. So maybe is my answer.
The way that I look at this, a Winners at War was really hard to pull off. You need 20 winners of equal gender split to agree to leave their families and their winnings and come back and do something that they're doing because they love it. And then Jeff said, that's kind of putting a bookend on what we've done with Survivor so far. Let's do 9 seasons where it's only newbies, and then we'll talk about season 50. And season 50 is going to be an all-returner, all-star style season. I anticipate what will happen going through the 50s, assuming that Survivor stays on the air. We will see something more like the 20s and the 30s where a couple, 2-3 returner seasons, but mostly new people coming in as well. That's what I think the 50s will be marked as. I'm feeling the 30s coming back around.
Yeah, I think it depends on the reception of 50.
Yes, and yes, if 50 sucks, then we'll go back to new people.
Yeah. I can absolutely see that happening. I think that they had this in mind when they started the whole new era with 41. I don't think they had any intention of having a single returnee season in the 40s. I think they knew that they wanted 50 to be this really big thing, so they were holding out for returnee seasons until then.
Probably.
Which means that I think we're actually going to get quite a few. I think we're going to get quite a few new seasons, and it's going to be a mix, in my opinion. I think we're going to have a couple of new era only, kind of like a All-Star 2.0, but it's only of new era returnees. And then hopefully, I would love to see a little bit more of a mix of like the 30s and 40s coming together. Not anything like Super Bowl, but just like people who had no chance of having a returnee season because the new era happened. So that's my hope. Now this one is for one specific person on the podcast. Pre asks, how does Derek feel about a lawyer winning Survivor?
An appropriate question. So this is a family-friendly podcast. When Kyle was announced the winner, and again, deserving winner, I did message expletive lawyers to our Survivor group chat. But you know what? It's all love. If you deserve the win, you deserve the win. I'm only sad that I was considering Kyle for a winner pick at the beginning and stuck to my principles and didn't pull the trigger on that. 2 seasons out of 48, considering that every season has a lawyer on it. My strategy isn't too bad. But it's in jest, though. I don't loathe lawyers in real life. I just, historically on Survivor, they cast a stereotype, and I didn't like that stereotype for a long time. But even when Savage came back on Cambodia, he was just super zen, chill. Like, he seems like the kind of guy who rakes his rock garden in the morning. And, like, I love that. I aspire to be like Andrew Savage. So again, for all my lawyer hate talk, pulling the veil back for a second, that's more for the podcast than it is true hatred. But we don't like Nick Wilson.
Bleep Nick Wilson. That was a good question, though.
That was a fair question. I'm glad that I was going to bring it up, and instead the listener reminded me.
That is Survivor 48, everybody. We did it. We made it through. Mixed opinions, I know for sure. There was a slog at times, but we're through and moving on. Hopefully bigger and better things. Which actually I know we are, because the next time you're going to hear from us, we're back to our Rewind series. We are getting into season 33, Millennials versus Gen X, which as of right now is my favorite season. We'll see if that changes in the rankings at the end of it. But that is currently what I have as my favorite season. So we are definitely moving on to bigger and better things. I'm very excited to get into this one. There will definitely be a bit of a gap before we get into that one. We're going to take a week-long break before we consider anything Survivor related. We're going to give ourselves a little break. And then, it'll take us a little bit to watch it and then record it. So that'll be out in June sometime.
Well-earned, well-deserved break. We love Survivor, but I mean, hey, variety is the spice of life. We can do something else on Wednesday for a little bit.
Yep.
But you know what's coming up now, because Ryan just said it. So feel free to send us any questions that you might have about the season. If you want to start watching it to be ready for the podcast, now is a great time to do so. If we do get any questions or comments or like discussion topics about, as mentioned, we break it up into the pre-merge and post-merge. So if anything comes through, we'll make sure to bring it up on the podcast. So do it.
One housekeeping item before social media. We forgot to tell everyone what we voted for Survivor 50. The voting is still open on that. I voted for Idols.
Yeah, I voted for Idols.
Same.
A listener pointed that out in a comment this week that we did not give our opinions. I responded to that person individually, but the broader audience deserves to know, well, we've been pushing back on most advantages and most twists. We all agreed that Idols were a great introduction to the game back in season 11 and season 12. And we would like to keep those.
There can be too many, but I don't want none.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Social media.
Like I said, you can engage with us and, toss out your questions for the upcoming Rewind series. And let us know what you thought about season 48. What do you think about the finale? What do you thought about the winner overall? How you rank it in the new era? It's Castaway Pod on basically all social media platforms. YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook are Castaway Consultants. And then we do have a website, which is thecastawayconsultants.com.
And as always, if you reach out and interact on Spotify, it's usually going to be me reaching out and interacting back with you. All of my responses are generally positive, unless you're a horrible person and I delete your comment. Not really. We are at the end of a season, so I want to obviously give everyone on the podcast their flowers. One, first and foremost to the listeners, this again was our biggest season by far. I wasn't expecting it to be as big as it was, but word of mouth continues to spread. I love seeing us pop up on Reddit, and when I see those comments, I try and say thank you. If you get tired of me doing that, just let me know and I will stop. Ryan does overnight editing of these episodes to keep them crisp, keep them clean, and all except for one episode this season when we were a day late due to medically induced insomnia, and we were so happy Ryan was sleeping at the time. Thank you, Ryan, for editing all of this. Much appreciated. Mm-hmm. And then Josh is doing all of the editing for YouTube, and he does almost all of the work on the web. He does all the work on the website now. So really, I'm just kind of a freeloader here for the most part. I appreciate these guys for keeping it going out there, and that's why I try and interact in comments and social media.
Thank you, Derek. But one thing you did do this season, brand new, was we up because Josh doesn't live up here and doesn't visit as often anymore. We had to upgrade to our Zoom because our meetings were only 35 minutes or whatever it was, and it was getting really effing annoying. Derek bankrolled a Zoom account for us this season, so we would not get interrupted mid conference call. So thank you, Derek.
Much appreciated for that. So big round of applause to the listeners and back patting for us. My one time, I'll say it, go and please give us a rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you can. We only do this once a season because we try not to shill it too hard. And if you have a friend who's loves Survivor and doesn't listen to a podcast, and maybe they're tired of On Fire, just point them to us. We want them to consume as much as they can, but hopefully you like us enough that you're willing to share us. And that's where I'll stop.
All right. We're done with season 48. This has been the Castaway Consultants.
Got nothing else for you.
Good night.